Hello there! This video is all about playing around and experimenting with painting tanks, especially those with just the one base colour. And no, it's not pre-shading, but something quite different. A technique created by Jose Luis Lopez called black and white. In this video, I'll go through each step of this technique, what I think of it, and see if it really works. So come and join me and let's paint a strong Soviet tank. This is Tamiya's 1/35th scale JSU 152. Like any recent Tamiya armour kit, it falls together like a dream, but it does have a few details missing, which seems to be Tamiya's hallmark. Having said that, it's got some really nice armour texture on the front plates. However, using some thin Tamiya putty, I added some armour texture on the hatches. I busied up the rear deck with some stowage and a canvas tarp. I added some more texture on the back plate, which was far too smooth. And for the first time, I tried adding weld details using rolled epoxy putty, hitting the top ventilator hatch and the tow hooks on the front and rear plates. Oh, plus some missing beads on the rear plate and hull. Very noticeable because, yep, I removed most of the fenders. The final details were replacing some of the handles with wire and adding foliage camo string on the sides. Now, let's get into this technique. Here's my T34 turret paint mule. I guess you could say the black and white technique is a very roundabout way of achieving modulation effects without requiring multiple paint tones. It's done by simply creating shadows and highlights across the different structures and angles on the model before finally applying a single base coat colour. You can see how a combination of different tonal values really pumps up the contrast and should equate to a striking finish when you apply that final colour. Will it work though? Well, first I need to prime the beast in white. Now, digging through my copious supplies of barely used products, I found this, the white version of Mr. Surfacer 1500 primer. I thinned this about 50-50 with unicorn tears, and I filmed this process wearing a mask of course, but I forgot to press the record button. So here's what the beast looks like all primed up. Lovely finish, highly recommended using this primer if you need to colour something white. Time to start the shadows first. I went with a very dark grey using these two MRP colours. I probably should have gone all black first, then do the darker grey. More on that later. I'll show you pre-shading first. This is where you shade every line and crevice, for example around this hatch. You just go all the way around the hatch, hit each one of the rivets and each and every panel line. This is very simple pre-shading, very stark, high contrast. Now, let's look at the black and white technique. Yes, there's still shading around each and every protuberance and line, but I'm graduating the shadows. This side of the hatch is very dark, but lighter on the other side. Instead of hitting every rivet with the same tone, I'm changing it up on each one. You can also add in streaks and other partial shadows. Now on this edge, you can start to modulate the effect with a very dark corner that moves away towards a lighter point. The far corner is not as dark, but has similar shadowing. There's another dark corner at this suspension arm, moving to slightly darker to no shading at all on the other arms. A similar effect on the opposite side, again breaking up the contrast and leaving a really nice effect. Let's go topside now, where I apply the first shades. Notice how with multiple thin passes, I'm slowly building up the shadow along the bottom of this armour plate. You'll notice I've got a bit of splatter going on here. I was painting in near 100% humidity, and I ended up thinning the MRP with unicorn tears. Usually it paints beautifully straight out of the bottle. Anyway, you can see I'm slowly bringing that shading up the plate to create an artificial low light. I'm now hitting the weld seams, adding streaks and other points to break up those big flat plates, and again I'm introducing artificial shadows. Even at the top of the plate where you would think lighter values makes more sense. Again, I'm not going for realism here. This is an artistic take on what the beast may have looked like on the battlefield. When it comes to breaking up this effect on panels, it's good to use a piece of card or plastic to shade in one side and then add further effects later on freehand. I could have gone even more stark here, starting with black first. Moving to the top of the beast, you can see how I've done the back plate in a very similar fashion, creating a big artificial shadow and lots of contrast compared to the front half, particularly with that panel effect near the cleaning rods. I'll do similar effects here on the mantlet covers and plates, breaking them up to accentuate the sides. Now I'm doing simple shading along the edges of hatches and other bits, but I will slowly graduate these effects as I go along, creating more interest. Next, I'm hitting the other side of the cleaning rods to break it up more from the back plate, and I'll shade in the front side of the ventilator. More work on the hatches, creating more shadows and graduation. It's hard to break up this area too much, as I obviously want some highlights here. Alright, here's the beast in the first stage, all shaded up. This took the best part of an hour to apply and was largely enjoyable. Now there's nothing to say you could just jump straight from here and apply the base coat, but I elected to complete the next stage, which is a white grey that tones down, literally, all these effects. So starting at the highlight positions first, I slowly blend in the shading doing multiple, very thin passes. I'm constantly moving the beast around to check the light sources and to see where the effect is best used, moving the airbrush closer and further away as needed to do the blending. Notice how that big dark shadow will get toned down here while leaving very subtle streaks and other shading, particularly around where the Pioneer tools will eventually go. I'm adding more and more highlights to the corners here to up the contrast, which then leads to the final next stage. Just like in modulation, I'm going to brush all the high points of the model, this time with a straight white paint. This really makes a stark effect, but will hopefully add to the final finish. Okay, the beast is done. Oh yeah, I found some scale logs in my yard, they look pretty nice. Ready to apply some paint, just one colour, Russian 4BO. I'm using a 3:3:1 mix of these Tamiya paints with a little pinch of the green clear. Now this is not a realistic match, okay? Don't shoot me down. It's almost radioactive green, but it will make a striking effect. I hope. Now this was thinned down considerably, like 70% plus thinner. As you can see with multiple passes on the bottom of the beast, it takes a lot of time to build up the colour. You can see the shading effects still working here with a lot of tonal difference underneath the radioactive green. Moving to the top of the tank. Again, multiple light thin passes with the airbrush. You can watch that colour effect very closely change, and just like using the black basing technique, that final mist coat, you have to be very careful not to go overboard and kill all of the effect. I think I did this on the fender, oh well. Okay, top of the beast. Let's see if that big fake shadow on the top, plus those super white rivets, actually survive this process. So far, so good. It's slowly coming to life, but I'm not 100% happy with it. I did find a fix, or a cheat if you will. This other side panel came alive a little bit better. That's if my damn camera can capture it properly. The back plate is the one I really wanted to shine, if you know what I mean. And the forced contrast has worked really well here, I must say, even though I'll probably cover most of this in mud in the next video. So that's it painted. I'm not sure it's working. It's got lots of variations and tones, but it's not really popping the way I wanted it to. There's an easy fix here. I'll add some white and yellow to the paint mix and bump up those highlights. All I'm doing is hitting the edges of panels and the tops of hatches to really increase the contrast. That should do it for now. Alright, so what do you think of this technique? Well, my thoughts are threefold. First, it's a really good lesson to learn about contrast and tones, but can be somewhat tricky to apply. Secondly, you shouldn't be afraid of having a big range of contrast. I should have started with just a straight black and worked my way up to a very stark white. Finally, I think trying different things is a good part of your technique bank, to fall back on that experience whenever you're stuck, trying to make a tricky paint subject really pop. Yes, I know there's no way this result is near the real thing, but it provides a great canvas to take it to a different level. And that's where I'm looking forward to the next stage, which is weathering. For this beast, I'm going to tackle an early spring vehicle that's just got some whitewash on its mantlip, but muddy everywhere else, which is why it's missing all those fenders. So in the next video, I'll also go over how I painted those tracks, where I'll be using the hairspray technique. Stay tuned for that one. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss it. Alright, that'll do. You know what to do. Hit the like button, leave a comment, blah blah blah. Happy modelling and stay safe. Cheers.